and Cynthia, one night, they've been giving these little house things and concerts, and so Susan says, well, do you think you and Meryl would like to come and play here? And I said, well, it's fine with me, but I'll have to check with Meryl. And so Meryl says, sure, we'd be glad to. And then she says, well, when do you think you'd like to do it? And I thought about it, and I thought, wow, that'd be a great way to end up my 89th year. Because tomorrow is the day that I start on my 91st year, because I'll turn 90 in the morning. Somewhere in the morning. So then we decided that, okay, then we're going to let you invite your friends and so forth. So I thought, oh, that's really nice. So we have friends from the East Coast, and I have to say that 70 years ago this spring, I was first in a recital with her mother, who was a dear friend of mine at Hofstra College. We were both music majors, and we initiated their student recitals. But we were the first ones to give student recital, and we did a 2-piano recital along with Squeaky Joan, who was a soprano. So she was also a student. Squeaky Joan. Yes, and so Jan's mother and I, even though that was my only year there, because I left home, I was 20 and I got tired of being moved around by the U.S. government. And so I left home, and through the years, Jan's mother and I remained friends all these 70 years, if you could believe. And unfortunately, Nina's no longer with us, nor is her husband, whom I had also met that spring. And but Jan and I have now become good friends, and she's here with her husband and her 2 sons, which are my dear friends' grandsons that I used to hear about all the time when they were growing up. And so they came from the East Coast. Our family, our dear family, came, of course, from the Bay Area. They got here yesterday. Our son Bram and his wife Ina and our grandson Neelakash. And then we have friends as close as 300 steps down the street who are here. And then we have all these other good friends that we've known. And we've known Karen since she was in our library in Fresno and was at my 80th birthday party 10 years ago. And then Dora used to babysit with Cuz. He used to babysit Avram when he was little. So these are people that we have known so, for many years. And then this is the most fun, is playing with this person right here. So we just have a good time. And that's what we're going to have now, is a good time playing.
You bet.
Okay. Meryl was a saxophonist with the original Klezmer Conservatory Band that toured for years and made a lot of records. And so but now she's a professor of music at Cal State San Marcos. So I'm just pleased that we become friends. This is, I guess, one of our newer friends, and the rest of you, I'm just so glad you're all here, and of course, the love of my life here, who has kept me going all these years, and has had to put up with being responsible for everything today, because I didn't want to do a darn thing all day long. So we're going to kind of talk about the music as we go, and we're going to start with a Brahms, and it's one of his Hungarian dances. In fact, it's Hungarian dance number 1, and he wrote this originally for 4 hands at the piano, which was really kind of neat for people in those days, back in the 19th century and the late 18th century, because people were beginning to have pianos, and that meant that if a young man could play the piano and his girlfriend could play the piano. They could sit very close on a piano bench. So composers started writing piano duets. This was, the great thing, because, the love life was pretty restricted to such good manners back then, and particularly in Victorian households. But they could really sit close to play these four-hand things. So all the Hungarian dances were transcribed for orchestra and God knows what else, everything you can imagine. So it's arranged, this version is arranged for piano and saxophone. Hi, Jack, glad you made it. And it's actually, the music was not Brahms's own tune, probably. He did not hesitate to borrow good tunes from time to time. So this was from probably a Hungarian who was maybe kind of part gypsy, because it has a kind of a gypsy feeling to it. Just so I get a kind of a... We just have to make sure we're still in tune.
And this is a soprano sax, in case some of you were wondering.
Tchaikovsky was asked to write for a music magazine that came out in Russia in this time. It was about 1876. And I don't know whether any of you remember, but when I was a kid, we had a music magazine in America called The Etude. And you got a copy every month, and it always had a new piano piece. Well, Tchaikovsky, who was always trying to make money and wasn't always easy, decided that, yes, he would take an offer from this magazine to write a piano piece for every month of the year in that year. And so this piece we're going to play is, in English they call it Sleigh Ride, but originally it was called Troika, and it was written for the month of November when it's very cold and probably snowy. And it really it starts with a nice melodic tune, and then you kind of have a sleigh ride, and you kind of hear the bells dingling, and then you hear the pony trotting, and you actually hear to me it sounds like the pony trotting anyway. And having been a horsewoman myself, why, that was a familiar sound to my ears. Anyway, he wrote this for those of you who are interested. Some of you probably think, well, this is more information that you really ever wanted to have. But he was also working on the Nutcracker at the time that he wrote this. And of course, that became one of his most popular pieces ever for ballet. And every Christmas and every New Year, every winter, why, nearly everywhere in America there's a ballet troupe. They do performances of the Nutcracker for young people. Next piece we're going to play, I'm going to let the composer tell you a little bit about. And some of you heard it at our earlier recital together, but we decided to play it again, and I thought maybe I'll hit more of the D's down on the left hand than I did the first time we performed it in public. Anyway, it's by Neela
Wait,
Koch.
so do I have to do both pieces at the same time, or do I just have to do this one right now?
Interesting.
Well, let's see, I hope I get all the D's. That he was only 9 when he wrote that one. Okay.
Thank you so much for saying that for me and arranging that for me, because I never dreamed that either one would happen with that piece. So, this next piece is also by me. I know I'm being very vocal today, and it is called the Duet in B flat for saxophone and piano, because it is a duet in B flat for saxophone and piano, and it was written specifically for this event and for my grandmother's 90th birthday.
we're gonna switch gears. That was our classical. We're gonna switch into playing a bunch of Jewish music now.
Great idea.
So the first piece is called Brogestans. There are only a couple of pieces that we played the last time we played, for some of you who've heard us, and this happens to be one of them. But we're going to start, Brogestans means angry dance, and it's a dance of the in-laws. And we're going to start out with a doina, and it's a completely improvised piece that would be played before, played it many times, including before a wedding, often to the bride-to-be. And as, some of you have heard this story before, but often this tune, and you'll see why, would make the bride cry, which probably wasn't such a hard thing to do considering most of the marriages were arranged. I can imagine. But in any case, so this piece is going to be, the first thing we're going to do is the doina, completely improvised. By the way, all of the pieces that we're playing, the klezmer and the Jewish and Israeli, we play them different every time we play, which is part of the real fun of it.
Because the left hand is not written out. I mean, it's just chords. So, you know, I never play it the same way.
Go ahead, give me Normally I play by ear, but a few of these tunes I'm gonna read because they're it's just because I am. I'll just leave it at that.
I'll make this.
Okay, do you want to take it when we go back to the top?
Nah.
Okay. So this piece is called Fear and the Maffatunum. And someone knows what that means. This is a piece that is escorting the parents of the bride and the groom back to their homes after the wedding. And it's got a really cool beat to it. It's really nice. It's a favorite of a bunch of people to play, including Yitzhak Perlman. He has a whole thing called In the Fiddler's House, actually with the band that I played with, and he plays this. But I was telling Phyllis that I actually don't really like the way he plays it because it's a little too in the pocket. Part of the fun of klezmer music is being able to stretch and play, and he's such a wonderful technical player that he plays it beautifully technically, but it sounds a little bit classical. The way I'm going to play it isn't going to sound classical. I'll move back a little bit. Yeah.
But I really have to keep my eye on her.
Yes. Ban Rebben Suda, by the rabbi's table. This one's another. This one has another beat. It's a more oompa kind of beat. By the way, most of these do not have composers. So in Eastern Europe, these would be played. Klezmer music is secular music. It would be played by itinerant musicians going from house to house and village to village, and they were known. They were basically known as what's called doorknob polishers. They were beggars, musicians who were beggars, trying to make a living, which was pretty cool. There's a Yidel Mitten Fiedel is a super wonderful Yiddish film that was made actually in Poland just before the war. And you see, it's a story of musicians going to village. It has a really cool twist because one of the, you know the movie?
Molly Picon.
Yeah, so Molly Picon, who some of you might know because she played Yenta in Fiddler on the Roof in the movie version of it, was a very famous Yiddish theater person. And in the movie, Yidel Mitten Fiedel, she pretends to be a boy in order to play in the band, the klezmer band, and they go from village to village. And as you can imagine, she falls in love with the, she played fiddle, must have been the clarinet player or something like that. So how it all unfolds is just a wonderful film and is widely available. So, but this is by Rebin Sitta, and I got through all of this by saying that this music was learned by ear. We don't know who the composers are for most of it. When I learned it from old recordings. That's how our whole band learned it, by ear. Also because when you learn it from musicians and you learn it by ear, you get also to the feeling of the music that you wouldn't get if you're just reading the outline of notes on a page, which gives us a lot of information, but not that feel. So, all right, by Rebin Sitta. I think I'll keep my glasses on just for the heck of it. Now, if you were in Eastern Europe, you'd be dancing! And if you were dancing, we would keep playing and playing and playing and playing and playing. So, well, maybe we'll do something where you can dance. And we'll play longer and longer and longer. But we want to play a couple of other favorite tunes. The Dodie Lee first, right? Yeah. Checking with the boss. This is Dodie Lee, and this one is Israeli. Was written by Nira Chen, and she was born 5 years before you in 1924.
Wow.
Yeah. And this is a super, it's a Hebrew song. Some of you might know it. It's really, really beautiful. It's often used at weddings for people walking down the aisle. It's called Dodie Lee from Song of Songs. that one's a really cool flute piece. So, for the flute people in here, I don't know if any of the rest of you play flute. I know they do. That one's really nice on the flute. So now we're going to play Dona Dona, which I think a lot of you probably know. And so please sing along. If you do, we'll play it twice. It was actually written by Shalom Secunda. So it was actually written as a Yiddish tune, but it was in Yiddish. The words are about bringing a calf to slaughter, and but it became an anthem recorded by Joan Baez as a human rights anthem. So you might know the English words, on a wagon bound for market, there's a calf with a mournful eye. So if you do, if you know the words, go ahead, feel free to sing along with us. If you know the tune, feel free just to sing la 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 la. Certainly appropriate. There's no way we can perform that without insisting the audience.
I think so. But funny, we played for her classes out at the university and they didn't know it. They were too young.
We had a really sweet dress rehearsal performance at Cal State San Marcos with about 80 students.
That's nice.
Most of them are going to become teachers, and what a great group of students, really super diverse, and they had such a good time. It was the first time that the majority of them had ever been at a live musical performance. Wow. Yeah, I mean, outside of maybe, hearing a rock band at, their high school, or, maybe someone singing at their home, but it was the very first time most of them had heard certainly the classical music, and pianist and a saxophonist live. So that was really sweet.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So we have one more tune for you. Aww.
And this is especially for my love.
This is one of her favorite tunes from childhood that her aunt, your aunt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Aunt Ray. Aunt Ray. We say Aunt Ray. Sang. It's called Rosenkismet Monland. So some of you might also know this. It's a very famous Yiddish folk song. It's a lullaby. It really is beautiful.
Kevin has something that he wants to say.
I don't. This was going to be a toast, but I don't actually have anything. So,
We can fix that.
a virtual toast. So, having two wonderful moms is wonderful in every way, except the English language doesn't actually deal with it very well. My mom, this mom, the mom we are celebrating tonight, is, as she said, entering her 10th decade. And I've got to say, if I have half her energy and can do half the things she can do when I enter my 7th, I'm so proud of myself that I will be completely insufferable. Not her though, because she is the kindest and gentlest and most nurturing person I think maybe in the world. And happy birthday, Ma Phyllis.
Thank you. I couldn't have been blessed with a better son. And I am so proud of him and his beautiful family and our grandson. I have to brag a little bit, and I'm going to cavell. He got a scholarship to a high school 2-week workshop at the Lamont School of Music in Denver for composition. And he's only in the 7th grade. And he entered 3 compositions, and he was not only admitted but given a scholarship for 2 weeks this summer. So there's lots of cake, lots of drink, lots of goodies. Thanks to Irma and Laura and our Susan and Bonnie and Cynthia and Lorena and us.
And the greatest blessing of my life, together with our wonderful son and our daughter-in-law and our grandson, as my wonderful Aunt Ray used to say, the one who would sing me Roises mit Wandelen, bis 120 Jahre, which means until 120 years.
We're only 120. What?
I already had a
Well, they are what keep me going, I'll tell you. And then to have friends like all of you who aren't my blood relatives. It's just been the greatest blessing to come down here and find all these wonderful friends, some of whom we've known, of course. Those of you who we've known for a long time know who you are. And then these wonderful new friends that we've made here. And then to have the blessing of having my college friend's daughter and her husband and the grandsons here, that 70 years ago we were friends, her mother and I, and that, I mean, what else could I ask for? All right, relatives.
Life is good. Idiot at the piano.
Oh, thank you. Now, am I supposed to do something?
All right, I'll do one.
You come up with more.
Phyllis. Oh, Phil. Hey, no. Okay, this is spontaneous, and I tend to plan. But who could be a better role model for all of us than you, who are smart and musical and passionate, authentic and gorgeous to look at.
Well, I'd like to make a toast to my most wonderful and newest friend. It's really been a joy to meet you, and the music has been a lot of fun, and I'm happy to have you now in my life, and I look forward to the next 20 years.
Thank you.
And
Why
more
only
music.
20?
More music.
30! 30!
Oh, wow.
But who's counting?
Who's counting? I can't even believe, 9-0? I mean,
Because
I get to really be Phyllis's blood relative. We're second cousins.
oh, really?
Yes, our grandmothers were sisters. Her father and my mother grew up very close to each other, but we didn't meet until I was 30. Phyllis must have been 46 then, but all the years before that, family would occasionally say to me, you know, you should meet your cousin Phyllis. You would have a lot in common. And boy, what a thrill to meet Phyllis and Lillian and Avram, who was a 1-year-old in a stroller. And I am so grateful for you, for your family, and I love you.
Oh, I love you too. She's like the sister I never had.
And now we have a birthday cake.
Yay!
Maybe each of you a little closer to
Happy birthday, dear Phyllis. Happy birthday to
Cake, one for each decade, and then 2 for the future decades.
All right.